Hello and welcome to the Memory Card. Now on this channel I try to do a review once a week, but this week is going to be a little bit different because technically this isn't really a review. I'm just going to be doing an early impressions of the Nintendo Switch. It's only been on the market for a little over 5 months now, so I can't really do a conclusive, all-encompassing review. So I'll just be doing my early impressions of the system, its hardware, some of the games so far, my thoughts as to how it might go later on in the future throughout its lifespan, and talk about my memories of launch and leading up to the launch because the Nintendo Switch here is poised to become possibly my favorite console ever, and I'd like to explain why. The Nintendo Switch came out on March 3rd of this year, and this is an important console for Nintendo, and honestly myself as well. A lot of Nintendo's success in the console space was riding on the Switch after the unfortunate financial failure of the Wii U. Despite the fact that I love the Wii U, it's one of my favorite consoles, honestly. But I can't deny that it was not a financial success whatsoever for Nintendo. For me, the Switch is important and exciting because, in a lot of ways, it's what I've wanted from a console since I was a little kid. Whenever I had to go to my brother's Little League baseball games growing up, I always wish I could take Jack and Daxter, Time Splitters, or Spyro with me and play it at the baseball park. And now with the Switch, I can finally fulfill my childhood wishes and take my full games with me wherever I go. I was actually skeptical about the Switch before it was officially announced and named. I followed the rumors intently while it was known as the NX. And I would check Twitter and YouTube all the time for the latest rumors because I just wanted to know everything I could about the NX. When I initially heard rumors that it would be a hybrid console merging home consoles and handhelds, I was worried, and for a brief time I thought Nintendo should just release a simple home console more along the lines of the PS4. But as soon as Nintendo said on Twitter that in October of 2016 that there would be a short trailer to officially announce this new console, I was ready to see what it was. And the trailer went live during one of the morning classes I had during my senior year of college, and I hated that class. But luckily I sat towards the back of that class, and I had a pretty good grade in the class, so it didn't really matter. So I just watched the trailer during that class, and I was instantly hooked by that trailer, by the initial reveal in October. Everything about that trailer was pitch perfect. And it felt like for the first time in a very long time, Nintendo finally knew how to market a system and get people excited for it. The tail end of the previous generation of consoles pretty much burnt me out on console AAA games in general, so being that excited for a new console before its release was great for me. I hadn't really been excited for a new console's release before the actual launch of the system since the Xbox 360, and even then that was nowhere near the levels of hype that I had for the Switch. I rewatched every trailer at least 20 times, and that mixed with my excitement for the release of Breath of the Wild, and it was a very smart move for Nintendo to launch their new console with one of the most anticipated games of the past 10 years easy. It's kind of similar to what Nintendo did with Twilight Princess for the Wii, but for me, this was a much bigger scale. Late at night in January, Nintendo did a really big live stream presentation on the Nintendo Switch and a lot of its 2017 game releases, with the biggest news being the trailer for Super Mario Odyssey and the final official trailer for Breath of the Wild. And the trailer for Breath of the Wild, the final one, is honestly probably one of the best trailers I've ever seen for a game. And it wasn't very long after that I had to go to bed because I was already up late for doing stuff for my job in college. But I was going to make sure that I was going to be right in line that following morning to get a pre-order. A lot of people did their pre-orders with Walmart and Amazon and Best Buy online, but I was worried about those because of how often pre-orders get canceled if you do them online. So I got up at 4 a.m. the following morning to make sure that I was one of the first people at GameStop so I could make sure that I could get my pre-order for the Switch. Now I was at GameStop for a long time for that pre-order, and I was the first person there. And I waited there quite a long time because GameStop didn't open up until about 10 a.m. or so. So I was there for quite a few hours, 6 actually. And it was really cold since it was January, and it was in the more northern part of my state. so it got really cold, but thankfully I prepared. But I was one of the lucky few that on launch day got a Nintendo Switch. This is the box for my console when I got it on launch day. And I love the box design on this. It's very sleek and modern, not kiddie like a lot of Nintendo consoles lately with the packaging and marketing around it. And it does a good job visually just demonstrating what the Switch is right here with this one image. And right here as well. It's really great. Whenever I got my Switch on launch day, all the system came with whenever I got it, well, it's the same way it is now. Comes with a Joy-Con grip, the dock, HDMI cables, USB-C power charger, which I'm so glad that this console uses USB-C for its power rather than some proprietary thing. Makes things a lot easier, more convenient. And of course, the system itself. And I got the gray one with the nice gray Joy-Cons. One of my favorite things about this system is that nice click whenever you put a Joy-Con back. And a lot of people complained about getting scratches on their screens whenever they would dock and undock their Switch, but I never had that issue. I don't even have a screen protector on mine. The one thing I have had hardware-wise is that the kickstand's a bit loose nowadays. And also got the wrist straps here that you put on the Joy-Con to make it easier to hit the little shoulder buttons inside the controller. I'll just get it out. These right here. Makes it easier to hit those whenever you're using a single Joy-Con as a controller. I won't go in too much detail on the controllers. I'll talk about the Switch controllers in their own separate videos, so I can give some more attention to them. I'll just do a basic overview here. And whenever I got my Switch, I got it with 2 games, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and 1-2 Switch, because I wanted to have a multiplayer game right off the bat, and I was a little skeptical about how Bomberman would turn out. That, and I wanted to be able to check out some of the features of the Joy-Cons, like the HD rumble and all that. And some of the games looked really fun. I'll talk more about 1-2 Switch in a video on that later on, though that might be interesting to try and film. One thing that's really interesting with the Switch is the size of its game cases. It's pretty much in between the size of a typical home console case, like with the PS4, Xbox 360, and Wii U. It's not as big as those, but it's nowhere near as small as a 3DS or Vita case. So it does a good job of, in every aspect of the console, communicate the fact that it's in between a handheld and a home console. One thing that sucks is there isn't really a manual in a lot of these, but I like the inside cover art. The art inside Breath of the Wild is gorgeous. Whenever I got my Nintendo Switch home on that launch night, whenever I got it with the system, a couple games, and I got it with the 3 of the Breath of the Wild amiibo. Got it with the Rider Link, Archer Link, and the Zelda. I'm a huge Zelda fan. I couldn't pass up on those. That, and I like getting amiibos for characters and franchises I care about. And whenever I got home, I was shocked by just how small the Switch really is. Whenever you see it in a video or a picture, it doesn't really get across just how small the Switch really is. Whenever I first opened up the box and saw these little Joy-Cons and felt them in my hands for the first time, and the way the buttons felt in the stick, and the cool little release button here to take the Joy-Con off the back. It's really smart design. I was immediately shocked, and one of the first things I did was take the Joy-Cons, after I put them on the Switch itself for the first time, was I slot them into the Joy-Con grip, usually called the dog controller, puppy controller, and I was surprised by how relatively good this controller felt. I spent a lot of really my first 140 hours of Breath of the Wild playing like this, or with the Joy-Con separate. Now, one of my favorite parts of the Wii was being able to play with my hands in a more natural state, just laying on my side playing a game with the Wiimote and nunchuck. And playing like this is even more comfortable than it was on the Wii, since you don't have the wire in between and there's less motion control in games, so you don't have to keep waggling. Although, after the 140th hour of Zelda, I did end up getting a Pro Controller. And this, I will get into more detail in my video on the Switch controllers, but the Switch Pro Controller is my all-time favorite controller. It's got pretty much everything I like in a controller. One of the big things being the width of the bumpers and the ZL/ZR buttons. I like having the triggers go along the length of my finger like a GameCube controller does, rather than the perpendicular style that the 360 triggers have in the Xbox One. Makes these way more comfortable to me. And there's just nice curves here. And Nintendo's already done some cool stuff with some limited edition special controllers, like this one for Splatoon 2 that I got alongside the game. It's got a cool green here and the pink. It's got all these Splatoon decals all over it in the front and back of the controller's faceplate, which is really cool. And one aspect I really think I like about the Switch is that it's very modern and forward-thinking, but there are still some cooler throwbacks. Like, it's kind of hard to see, but the faceplate of backplate of the Switch Pro controller is translucent. It's a bit smoky, so you can't see it quite as well as you could on a lot of the N64 controllers or the Game Boy Color, but it's definitely a cool little touch. And other companies have been doing, well, third-party companies have been doing accessories and things like that. It's very easy to find a Joy-Con grip made by someone else, and I really like this Power A Splatoon 2 Joy-Con grip. It actually has more ergonomic grips here on the side, and it's a little bit wider in the center here than the original Joy-Con grip. It's not a massive difference, but it's a bit noticeable to me, and I just like the details on this. I'll get more into that in its own video. And one thing that shocked me immediately about the Switch is how tiny the games are. This is smaller than a Vita game card or the 3DS. It's amazing how many great, huge, expansive games can be fit on tiny little cartridges like this. And a lot of the games that have been released for the Switch have been top quality games, like Breath of the Wild and Splatoon 2 and ARMS and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. There's been pretty much a new big time game released for the system each month, and that's been a great cadence of games coming out, because one of the big problems of the Wii and the Wii U and the GameCube and even the N64 were the game droughts that would really drag the momentum of the system down. Now with the Wii U, that didn't bug me as much because I was busy catching up on the system's really great library of games and Wii games as well during 2016, which didn't have very many new Wii U games out, and the ones that did come out usually didn't review too well. But that didn't bug me because I was busy collecting. But the Switch, it's been a really exciting 5 months of the system so far, and I'm really excited for the games coming out this year. Like, for instance, in about a week or so, I'm going to have Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which when I first saw it I thought it looked ridiculous, but now looks really fun. Mario Odyssey in October, and then next year with Yoshi and Kirby and a new Pokemon game on the system, maybe 2018 or 2019. And that's something that Pokemon fans like myself have been wanting since I was a child, being able to play a full, real Pokemon game on my home console. And since the Switch is a portable and a home console, it's been the best possible way for Pokemon to be able to come to a home console, and I can't wait for that to come out. And not only with the big releases, Nintendo has been doing really well with getting really great indie games on the Switch. Got one of my favorite games from last year, Shantae and Half Genie Hero, on the Switch already, and got Shovel Knight, Retro City Rampage, Snipper Clips, and Fast Racing RMX. There's a lot of fantastic games on this console already within the first 5 months. Definitely has me even more excited for what the rest of this console's lifespan has to offer. Now, it's still hard to find a Switch for a lot of people, but if you can find one, I definitely recommend getting it. This is a fantastic piece of hardware, and it's got great games already and with fantastic potential on the near horizon with even a new Metroid come out in 2018. That's going to be amazing. A Metroid Prime 4. Well, I hope it'll be amazing. At E3 this year, all we really got was a logo and that it's in development, but I'm definitely excited. The Metroid games are really great games. But I would definitely recommend that anyone that's on the fence at all should get a Switch. It's a fantastic console. And I it isn't the only current generation console I have. I have the PS4 also, but this thing is unique. It's the most unique home console I think that's ever been made. And it has an automatic value proposition to it and makes you want to get the third party releases and multi platform games and indie games on the Switch because it has a unique advantage that no other console has. Because you can take the same games anywhere you go. You don't have to just be sitting on your couch playing your new Zelda game or whatever might also get released in this, like Sonic Mania. You can play this on a bus or a plane or while you're waiting in a lobby for a dentist appointment or something like that, or at a restaurant while you're waiting for your food to come. You don't have to just sit at home to be able to play your full games. It don't have to feel like it's some hampered, cut down handheld version. And that's one of the really cool things about the Switch. It's got an insane amount of potential to it. So yeah, as you can probably tell, I'm really happy with the Switch. That doesn't mean I think it's perfect. I wish, like with the games, I wish we had more of those third-party releases and multi-platform games. I wish I could play Dark Souls on this. I wish I could have Witcher 3 on this. I wish I had Persona on this. I just want to play everything I can on the Switch. But one of the problems I do have with it, for one thing, there's a really, really small hard drive internal memory in the Switch, only 32 gigs out of the box. Now, this does take micro SD cards, and that helps. That and also a lot of the great games on the Switch you can get physical versions of anyway, and that doesn't take up hard drive space, but still. For people that want more digital or to download a lot of indie games and a lot of those Neo Geo releases, you're going to want a good micro SD card in there. Currently have a 128 gig in there. And if you can go bigger, 256 would be good too. But the storage space is definitely far, far lower than there is on the PS4 or Xbox One, although it is designed to be able to handle micro SD cards up to a terabyte plus, so it's definitely future-proofed. And I do wish that the battery was a bit better. I wish the battery life was longer on this, but realistically, the Vita and the 3DS only have about 5-hour batteries anyway, so it's not really that bad, especially considering how powerful this is when thinking of it as a handheld. Also, I wish that the Virtual Console was on the system already. Now, for me personally, I don't care quite as much about the Virtual Console just because I collect all the old games and consoles anyway. But it'd be nice to be able to have portable versions of all those games on this system. Because again, I want to play everything I can on this system with this amazing controller, or this one too. It's really cool. I love the colors. And stuff with the online's a bit ridiculous, like the Nintendo Online app you have to use your phone for. And right now, the way it is in its current state, it's not very good. And I wish that they would just have the online infrastructure with the parties and voice chat and all that just on the system itself. Although there'd be some issues with that considering that the Pro controller and the grips and all that, they don't have headphone jack, so you wouldn't be able to use a headset unless you're playing a Switch in handheld mode. So that's definitely a pain, and I wish the kickstand had more options than just the one, where you can just set it like that, although there are third-party solutions like the Hori stand, which I have, which is amazing. And if all you have are the Joy-Cons, for like a 2D fighting game or something, the split directional buttons here don't work as well as a traditional D-pad. Although, since I would recommend getting a Pro controller anyway because they're phenomenal, that takes care of that issue. But still, I imagine for a fair amount of people, it'd be a pain dealing with just using this for a 2D fighting game or something like that. Well, I played Blaster Master Zero within about a week of launch, and I made do with the split D-pad, and it worked fine for me. But for people that are more hardcore about the 2D fighting games and like that, I could see that bugging them quite a bit. But despite the complaints that I have, and I have a couple, but honestly, they're vastly outweighed by the fantastic games and amazing hardware and controllers and the great snappy user interface that this system has. It's a fantastic console, and I recommend everyone to get a Switch because this thing is amazing. And I'm definitely interested in seeing how the lifespan of this Switch fares out. And I plan on doing another video years down the line towards the end of the lifespan when there's a Switch 2 or update or however console generations are going to happen now that we have a PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Such a stupid, clumsy name. I don't know how generations are going to be, so I'm not sure if there is going to be a Switch 2 or if it's going to be a Switch Plus or whatever it'll be, if it's just continuing revisions or if it's actually a whole new console. But regardless, years down the line, I'll do another video on this, do a more comprehensive review of the console in its entirety with all the games that were released for it and give a more cumulative review. But for now, my early impressions are extraordinarily positive for the Switch. It's currently vying for my favorite console of all time, at the very least from a hardware perspective, from a console like the controller perspective, with the split Joy-Cons or a Pro controller. And with games like Zelda, this is already very high on my list of favorite consoles of all time. At the very least, the hardware and controllers are my favorite ever. Oh, these games. But regardless, I'll cut this short so I don't just keep gushing all over this system. Just definitely highly recommend the Switch. So as you could probably tell by all my gushing, I love the Switch. It's a fantastic system, and it's what I've wanted from consoles since I was a little kid. Being able to take my full console games wherever I go. It's definitely exciting, and that's not something I've been able to say about new console games in a long time. It was awesome getting to go back to the old Wii games and Wii U games whenever I got my Wii U, but being able to be this excited about the new games coming out and the prospect of the future of a system is not something I've had in a very long time, honestly, and it definitely feels good. And considering my love of the Switch, you can definitely expect plenty of reviews of Nintendo Switch hardware and accessories and games for the system because I want to play everything I can on this system. That doesn't mean that I'm going to be neglecting any of my other systems that I've got. Want to have variety on this channel, but if you like Switch stuff, I'll definitely be covering it. But regardless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time on the memory card.